Hey everybody, welcome to Tease Talk. I'm going to be your host tonight, Dean Sage. If you're familiar with the GSC Friday program, you might remember me from GSC Friday. I've also hosted some other live broadcasts before. Tonight's going to be a bit different. We're doing a brand new thing that we're calling Tease Talk, where I get to introduce you to something that's really pretty awesome. And we also have some amazing panelists who are going to join us tonight and talk about a whole wide range of things. But honestly, this has been one of my brainchilds for probably about 2 years, and I finally got the okay of a really amazing artist, author, and actor who decided to help me put this together, and I really couldn't have gotten anywhere without him. So I want to introduce him first and give him really big props and thanks for what he did tonight, and that's Mr. Christopher Logan. Hey Chris, how you doing tonight?
Good, good. Hi, everybody.
Now Chris, tell us just a little bit about you before we get into the whole book stuff, but who are you like when you're not making these wonderful, pretty books?
Well, I'm an actor. People may recognize me from the first 6 minutes of a show where I scream in an accent and die, because that happens often. Um, I work in Vancouver, and I'm producing books, coffee table books on burlesque and drag to support my own filmmaking activities and to support independent film, sort of art that produces art.
Oh, I love that. That's really great. Art that produces art. And if you guys are live with us on Twitter, we're on deansagemedia.com/live, or if that's not working, check on Twitter at BookTheFilm, and also it's going to be on Dean Sage Media in a second. There's a link that goes directly to the YouTube. If this cuts out, you might try that. It's a little bit better. Chris, before we introduce the panel tonight, let's go back over to you and talk to you for a second, and tell me, where did all of this start? I mean, Book the Film. Where does that come from?
Well, it's books that raise money for film projects. So I originally had written a film on drag and was trying to find a way to fund it, and I wanted the money to come from people who also loved the art of drag. So I thought that if we put a book together of the top drag queens in the world, we'd build the market for the film, and we'd also engage the people that would one day be the people who would want to see the film at the same time as raising the money.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so you started with the idea of the books and the films going together, and that's kind of why Book the Film, obviously. But what drew you specifically to coffee table books? And even though it seems like book itself is a dying market.
Well, originally I had written a children's book, Daphne, the Penguin Who Wanted to Fly, and it had sold quite well, and I realized I could make money writing and using that to produce money for the films, but I couldn't write 5 novels or 5 kids' books in a year, so I started going towards picture books and photo books, and artists like drag queens and burlesque people, circus folk, everyone has all these fantastic photos that are just out there that they've used once on a poster or used to promote themselves that the rest of the people outside their city haven't seen. So now it's like the first book, it was a collection of repurposed art. Photos that had been used in a small circle before, but now are put together as a giant collection that ends up furthering things. And it was easier to put the photo book together than start from scratch, shall we say.
Oh, really interesting. Okay, well, we're going to get a chance to preview this book in a second, which is kind of very exciting. And we have some of the contributors as well as some amazing panelists who are here just to talk about gender and other issues that are going on that are kind of all balled in together. I'm going to go through and introduce our panel now, and I have an amazing co-host for this evening who is going to be even more snazzy, that's a new word, sassy and snarky. Yeah, sassy and snarky than I am, and that's Courtney Conkers. Courtney, good evening. How are you?
Hello, I'm super fantastic. How are you?
Tell us a little bit about you. Give us like the 30-second commercial. Who are you? What do you do? What the heck is a bio queen?
30 seconds. That's tough for me. I'm not very concise.
I'm timing you.
Okay, good. Okay, so in my spare time, I am a bio queen. So basically that means I'm a drag performer or drag artist who is a biological woman. It's not a new concept, but the term itself is a little bit new, and the way that we're trending right now is kind of new as well. I do perform. I'm off right now because I just moved to Toronto, and I also, like a big dummy, dislocated my knee. So I haven't been performing, but what I do with my bio drag is I travel with a drag fan group called the Drag Coven. It's me and 2 friends. We're huge drag fans. We express our appreciation for the queens and their drag by recreating their looks, dressing up, hand-making gifts, and traveling literally all over the continent for drag, because it doesn't really come close to us in Canada to the level that we'd like, so we go to it. And then when I'm not doing drag, I contribute to the website work.com, which is a drag and nightlife website run by my drag mother, Chiffon Dior, and it's a really great platform for queens, artists, writers, basically anybody creative. And then actual income-wise, which people always forget that I have a job because I'm so busy doing drag stuff all the time, I am currently working in Toronto at a yarn boutique, but primarily I am a writer. So I'm writing freelance for several different sources. I write for crafting blogs, DIY blogs, women's online magazines, feminist blogs, and whatever academia-based gender and identity things contact me.
And I think that's going to be a theme tonight. We have a professor, we have a freelance blogger, we have an actor, an author, and we have a photographer. So, and all of us do have little day jobs, but I think we have a lot of fun doing some of the other things that we do, including this. And of course, this is fun for me because we get a chance to share with you. But if you are listening to us live, either on deansagemedia.com/live or on the YouTube link, go ahead and get your questions ready. You can tweet those using the hashtag TeaseTalk, and make sure you at me at deansagemedia so that I see it, and we'll ask your questions on air. We're going to get to the question and answer period in just a little bit, so you've got a little bit of time to think about your questions, and I'm going to introduce you to the rest of the panel. So we're going to keep on moving ahead here, and I am a shutterbug. I don't think I have anyone else that I can really talk to. If I mention f-stops or start talking about lighting adjustments or even try to explain why my lights are exactly where they are tonight, everyone's eyes just glaze over and they hate me. So I have a fellow kindred heart maybe, and that's our photographer, Alina Sullivan. Alina, good evening. How are you? Oh, you know what? We can't hear you. I think you might be muted or your sound might be off. We're going to come right back to you while we get that figured out. So actually, instead, one of my other favorite people on the panel is Ryan Caldwell, our professor. Ryan, give us, I mean, you don't have to hold it to 30 seconds, but tell us a little bit about you.
Well, hi, Dean. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be with this whole group tonight. Basically, I am a professor. I'm a sociologist and a philosopher. I teach classes about gender and sexuality, social theory, sociology, so really all kinds of different things. I'm at a small liberal arts school in Southern California, but definitely one of my interests, aside from just teaching, is drag. So it was interesting when I first met Chris. He was doing his book launch here in LA, and we became sort of immediate friends because of my interest in performance art and performative identity. So one of the things that I'm definitely interested in is how people construct their identity through art and through this kind of performative thing. It could be drag, it could be in other ways. But yeah, that is definitely one of my interests, and so I'm always trying to combine, well, I call it tricking students into learning, but you know, through taking them to things like drag shows or other kinds, you know, art museums, something like that, where I can get them to discuss really kind of deep theory while looking at amazing art and try and really get them to self-reflect. I'm also a sister of perpetual indulgence here in Los Angeles, where I think it's really important to not only take some of the things that I teach about and firmly believe in as a feminist and queer theorist, but also put them into kind of an activist perspective and framework. So, you know, I'm definitely trying to change the world, and yeah, so super busy, kind of like a lot of the other panelists here. So, yeah.
Well, that's really cool. I think Alina might be having some technical difficulties. Alina, why don't you try hanging up on the Hangout and coming right back in and seeing if that fixes it, and we'll see you in a second. While she's doing that, Chris, can you actually tell us a little bit about Alina, because she hasn't got a chance to tell us about herself? I know she's actually connected to the book as well, so we can kind of work into that as a part of it.
Well, Alina is one of the photographers. She works under the name Photolina, and she's been a fantastic scene burlesque photographer. She does a lot of burlesque performances, performance shots.
Hang on 1 second, Chris. 1 second,
Sure.
Chris. Alina, your sound is working again. If you can plug your headphones back in, we'll be right there. We're just talking about you, of course.
I should get the dirty stuff out before she gets her headphones in.
Hurry up.
Quick.
No, Alina's a fantastic photographer. She's all over the burlesque book. She's one of 3 female photographers that did a lot of fantastic performance shots for us. So we got the live feel of burlesque, the emotion, the eroticism, the sexuality of it captured. Some lovely movement shots, some lovely performance pieces. Alina submitted and contributed a lot to the book.
Excellent, excellent. All right, Alina, hello. Are you with us? We can hear you. Yay!
Yay!
Well, Chris has given a great introduction to you as well, but tell us a little bit, like, what got you interested in photography? Why burlesque? And you know, what kind of drew you to that side of things?
Well, photography, I've been into photography since my teens, but in terms of burlesque, I remember going to Toronto's Pride Festival back in probably 2006, and I was shooting the burlesque scene back then. It was the first time I had ever seen burlesque, and I remember seeing Toronto's Skin Tight Out of Sight perform, and I completely fell in love with it. It was everything about burlesque that I fell in love with. The idea of the fact that anybody can do burlesque, male, female, curvy, not curvy. It didn't matter who you were. It was about the charisma you had on stage. And I've been shooting it ever since. I just absolutely love burlesque.
That's a really amazing story, and it's kind of interesting, and something we're going to talk about in a bit. I actually have prepped Ryan a little bit to give us a little introduction to it, but it's interesting, and I think Chris actually loved the fact that we have 3 women on the panel, and then Chris and I, and because burlesque touches so many different areas of feminism and other things. It's going to be really fun to kind of hear from people on different sides of the performance spectrum to kind of let us know about that. But if you are listening to us live, remember hashtag is Tease Talk, and at Dean Sage Media, you can get your questions ready. You can start sending those in. I'll start asking the questions on air in just a second. So as you have them, pop them in. I've got my phone ready. We're hooked in and connected. If Google doesn't continue on being a butt monkey, I think I've had to restart this 3 times now. So my panel's bored with me for that. But I'm going to go over to Chris. And Chris, I think it's time to start teasing this book. So do you have it ready? Can we see it? Like, show it to us. What's it look like? Oh, hold it higher. Hold it higher. Oh my gosh.
This is the beautiful cover of our book, shot by photographer Carl Giant. It's a performance artist named Meow Meow on the cover, because if I put a burlesque artist on the cover, all the other burlesque artists would kill me. It is 160 pages.
Yeah, I was going to say, turn to the side, show us how thick it is.
Oh, yes.
Oh, look at, oh yes, that is a proper
It's a proper sized table book. It's 11 by 11 inches. It is a 3-pound book. It's quite heavy. And it's full of fantastic photography. Let me find Olina here.
It's nice that you're pretty while you're finding pretty pictures.
We have a fabulous photo spread by Alan Hayslip and Olina of Jezebel Thunder.
Hold it up a little bit. There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Beautiful stuff.
And we're going to have preview shots and teasers of this when we put this up on the YouTube afterward. I'll be splicing in some wonderful teaser shots. So even if you aren't catching all this broadcast tonight, we're going to have this live on Chris's page. And so you'll be able to tune in and see some more of that beautiful stuff tonight. And sadly we had a wonderful slideshow, but the Google system is being a butt monkey, as I've said. And
we should have a little cartoon for the next show. We should have a little butt monkey named Google who comes out and introduces people, and then he can like throw them out and bring them back in and drag them by their tails or their bows for Courtney.
See, this is why you work in entertainment, because that's the perfect way to do about it. Actually, a lot of the advertising and things that you've seen for tonight all came out of Chris's suggestions, and I have to just give him a lot of credit for making this come together tonight. So I'm very excited and very happy that
the entertainment industry is one of the only industries you can work in and use the word butt monkey as a pitch or as a business idea.
I think it actually sets you apart. It makes it so that you get your foot in the door. In the elevator, you mention butt monkey, show the cute character, and at least you get the next 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, pretty much, if they're cute. If they're cute or if they're rich. Otherwise, you keep the butt monkey to yourself.
Courtney, I want to come over to you for a second.
Sure.
Now, you're kind of representing the performer spectrum tonight.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what it's like for you to be a performer, to get up on stages or at venues and things like that, and what drew you to that, and then maybe speak a little bit about what it's like being a female drag queen.
Okay, sure. So I'm a performer because I'm a giant show-off.
The bow didn't give it away at all.
No, not at all. I'm very subtle and shy. No. I'm a giant show-off, but I like to do it in a way that doesn't always just get me the attention, but makes people laugh or go, ooh, or whatever it is that they can do, some kind of entertainment. I've always been a performer. I was actually a ballerina from the age of 3. So I grew up through the competitive dance world. I stopped dancing in university when I got very, very academic, and I was so sad about it. I started trying to do all these other creative things to get back into it, and that kind of led me through to the the love of Lady Gaga. And I started cosplaying Lady Gaga. I actually got so into her that I wrote my master's thesis on Lady Gaga and how she manipulated her identity and her gender and really engaged in performative identity theory online to communicate messages about gender and sexuality to young fans. And they then processed those, recreated them, and communicated them back. So through studying that, I started cosplaying her. And then Gaga did a jazz album, which was wonderful and lovely, but not as easy to recreate because I can't hand bead sequin gowns. So I suddenly started watching Drag Race because I got sick for a week. I had nothing to do, and all my Gaga friends were like, how in the world, how is it even possible that you've written a thesis that involves drag, and I did my thesis proposal presentation in drag as a king to tie myself into the theories, and I'd never watched RuPaul's Drag Race. So I was forced to sit down, watch the whole thing, marathon it from the beginning, and I went, oh my God, my life has changed forever. And I'd always known drag, but it just made it that much more accessible to me because I was at school, I was in classes, I didn't have time to go out to the shows. So the second I graduated that degree, you can bet that I got out to the shows. And that's kind of how I started getting into drag and learning what bio queens are. I didn't know that it was a community. I didn't know it was a thing. I showed up to drag shows, and I'd always recreated Gaga looks to go to her shows. So when we started going to drag shows, it was just no different. I was like, well, you know, this performer is just as crazy and decked out, if not more so, because of the gender illusion as Lady Gaga's always been. So I'm just going to recreate her instead. And through that, the performers actually started saying, like, wow, I love your drag. And I'd be like, silly, I'm not a drag queen. I get mistaken for a drag queen all the time because I'm flat and I don't have hips. And I got that kind of, my body's just androgynous enough that I can confuse the hell out of everybody. Oh, I confuse everybody. It's great. I love it. I live for it. But they started telling me they liked my drag. And I'd say, well, I'm not doing drag. I'm just a girl in a costume. And the queens would get heated. And they'd be like, no, that's not a thing. You're not a girl in a costume. This is drag. So through that, I found the bio queen community. It's very small in Canada. We've definitely got a lot of great bio queens. But in Ottawa, where I was living at the time, which is our capital, I was the first and I think only performing bio queen there. I've moved to Toronto now, and I think there's like a grand total of 3 of us. We intersect a lot with like the drag queen, drag king, burlesque community, but in terms of bio queen, like claiming the bio queen identity and using terms like bio queen, faux queen, lady queen, whatever it is, yeah, there's about 3 of us. So I haven't performed here yet because of the dislocated knee, but hopefully I'll be doing that soon. But yeah, so I've performed in Ottawa. I've performed a couple of times in the States when I travel with Drag Coven, and I adore it. It is interesting being a bio queen versus a drag queen, though, because like I said, I confuse the hell out of everybody. Because I look like a drag queen, but then I'm only 5'4", and I have a small voice. So the second I open my mouth, they go, and they realize something's a little different than the drag queens they're used to.
I know 5'1" gay boys with higher voices than you, so please don't let them tell you otherwise.
I know,
want to be the 5'1" gay boy with a deep voice. That would be more of a shock.
I could probably introduce you to a few. But yeah,
Courtney,
yeah.
I think you should have 2 male backup dancers named Subtle and Shy. I really think you should.
And it would be a nice contrast, right?
Yeah.
We'll take it on the road.
I'm gonna throw some stuff over to Ryan for a second, because Courtney brought up some really interesting things, Ryan, and I wanted to point them out and kind of throw that over to you. She mentioned Lady Gaga. She mentioned cosplay, and specifically as it related to gender identity. And this is sort of getting into your home field advantage. So, is that something that's common that you found in both your research and some of the experiences that you've had?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Some of the images and I guess like performative identity that I'm really interested in are the ones that really challenge really gender categories. So for me, I'm really interested in maybe not so much duplication of stereotypical like gender categories. So maybe not exactly what it means to be the stereotype of femininity, perhaps, but really images that or performances that question. those kinds of images. And so that's really kind of the crux of my research and some of the publications and data that I'm collecting now through interview. Because for me, I think that kind of looking at how people present themselves might get me to start thinking and theorizing about really maybe different ways to exist. And I think that having just really kind of exactly like Courtney was saying, having those kind of representations of possibility, especially for young people who, you know, I work at a university, of course, who are so many times thinking about, you know, well, hey, how do I fit into this world, can be so empowering. And I was just going to joke with Courtney, like, try being, you know, I'm almost, 5'11" with a boy's name, you know, right, a stereotypical boy's name. So, right, people are like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, I know. So for me, I think like the drag community or like the performance art community really allows those moments for people to be exactly what Courtney maybe was writing about. I would love to read your thesis, by the way. But exactly what kind of that moment, I think, that she was studying and that really attending kind of a drag show or a performance event, whatever it might be, kind of leaves you continually thinking about, right? Like, hey, how do I fit into something that I might not even I thought I identified with initially? And it kind of gives you that self-reflexive moment to really empower yourself to figure out, you know, who am I in this world? How do I exist in this world? It's a form of art, you know, whether we're talking about burlesque, drag, whatever it might be. And, you know, well, you don't know, but I actually teach with Christopher's books, his drag book, his first book, as well as this burlesque book. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I'm teaching a feminist and queer theory class right now. We're using his drag book. And as soon as I get that burlesque book in my hands, that's definitely going to be something that I teach with, because in my mind, cultural representations are exactly that. They're representations of possibility. And
let me pop in here for a second. Just
yeah.
You've given us a lot of information, and I don't mean to stop the train at the station. But I wanted to just circle back to something because Courtney brought it up, and I think that this is sort of an interesting moment. Maybe there are a lot of hesitations and things when it comes to performative dress, especially after a certain age. You know, I think that after the supposed to, you know, make-believe thing, you know, boys putting on dresses, or girls, you know, putting on, I don't know, it's gotten better for them, but it's, you know, there's still lots of gender inequality things that are going on. But just speak for a second and think about talking to, you know, some of the younger people out there, or maybe some of the parents or things. Break it down to like the Sisters of Indulgence would.
Sure.
What is it? Is it really that big of a deal to do performative dress? Does it mean something?
In my mind, it's a huge deal. It means that you are empowering yourself to be whatever it is that you want to be at that moment. And so you know, here I am. I'm going to tell you my age. I'm 42 years old, right? And so I still go out, you know, whether it's talking about in full drag or as a sister, or whether I show up to school wearing whatever I want to wear. And I think that is super important, especially for a very young person who might be trying on, you know, clothing or an outfit or an identity. It doesn't necessarily label them or stick them in a certain category for life. I mean, that's one thing that we have to remember, is these categories that we so desperately seem to cling on to for as a culture. We just created those as a really easy way to try and understand. It's like walking into a store and, oh, look, the boys' clothes are on the right and the girls are on the left. Well, that's just a matter of simplicity, and it certainly doesn't describe the really rich diversity that exists in the world, and that diversity is what is so beautiful, right? And so
I absolutely adore that.
Yeah.
And you know, if you've got more specific questions for Ryan on the subject, make sure that you tweet us at Tease Talk, or at Dean Sage Media, #Tease Talk, and we will get those questions answered for you. As you can tell, we can do it, and probably will do, an entire another program with the professor, because she and I could riff on this for ages and ages, and be about one of us that would probably be paying attention to the other time. But that's fine. However, I'm going to tell Chris, get a book page ready, because I'm going to go over to Alina, and we're going to talk a little bit about taking pictures, naughty pictures. So, Alina, define for us what burlesque photography is, because we kind of, you know, maybe know what burlesque is, but what is burlesque photography?
Well, for me, what I do in burlesque photography is capturing the perfect moment during a performance. It's capturing that moment with just that perfect look that happens during a performance, that perfect step, that perfect turn. It comes from months or years of going to performance after performance and getting to know a specific performer's walk, the way they go across the stage, how they react to music. And you can see it when you look at other burlesque performance photographers, where they've learned to anticipate those moments. It's different than going into a studio with a burlesque performer where you have all that time to set up the shot and get it absolutely perfect, which I still enjoy doing.
Is this sort of like, I mean, this is closer to like editorial news type photography where you're in the moment trying to capture the moment and it's ephemeral, it's not going to be there in a second from now?
Almost, because I'm not a typical kind of editorial photographer in that I take those photos and then I apply a completely artistic feel to them. So I take the photos one step further. I have a graphic design background. I've been doing graphic design for 20 years, and I've never been able to stop myself from going in and basically making the photos more painterly or accentuating the photos in some way.
So for you, it's about capturing the moment and then going back and using an artistic eye to sort of create something even more artistic on top of the moment that you captured.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and are these naughty photos? Is there eroticism to this?
For me, there is. I find them sultry. I find them sexy. I find them sensual. They're a tease. But the feelings that they bring out in people is individual to that person. I've cried at performances, too, depending on what the character was that was brought out by the burlesque performer and the music that they picked and the costuming. So it can be so many things. That's what I love about burlesque. It's a story. Yeah, it's so many things, burlesque.
Oh, I love that. Chris, I'm coming over to you.
Yes.
So Alina was telling us a little bit about capturing moments.
Well, I did find a good photo for that.
Yeah,
I did find a
us.
good photo for that. There was a performer named Media Noche who is phenomenal. And I don't know if you can see that okay. Media Noche
Tilt it
there?
just a little, yeah, tilt it just a little bit so the glare's off. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. And as you can see, Alina has caught this fantastic moment where she's completely throwing herself into the performance. Complete movement, complete vibrancy. And then she also has photos like of Anna Evans that are, they might seem like a little riskier and stuff like that, but there's such beauty to the shot and the lighting and the subtleties that she captures in these women. It's people really owning their bodies, not selling them. You know?
Ooh,
it's fantastic.
I like that.
And also, I should mention, for the duration of the show, if you go to bookthefilm.com, you can buy the book at 30% off with the code Tease as a discount code, TEASE. So.
Yep, and hashtag, of course, hashtag Tease Talk. We desperately want your questions because while I can pontificate and throw stuff at them, we really would like to know what you want to know. So make sure you throw those at us at Tease Talk, at DSage Media, or hashtag Tease Talk on Twitter. You can also write Chris on his Facebook, and we'll check those comments there periodically. I'm going to head over to Courtney for a second because we talked a little bit about performance and we've talked about tease, and the whole tonight is, of course, a tease itself. We're teasing you about this book, hoping that you will support a wonderful indie artist in the process. But, Courtney, tell me a little bit about how tease fits into what you do and how performance itself might feel like a tease sometimes.
Sure. So I get questions all the time that kind of challenge me a little bit, and it's not that people are malicious, but it's more an attempt to understand what I do because it's not necessarily straightforward to a lot of people. I get asked
just interrupt, are they talking about, like, if people are like, are you a boy, or are you trying to be a boy, do you want to be a boy, is that kind of a thing? Like, what are you wanting to be a drag queen because you want to be a boy, something like that?
Yeah, I get questions about my gender and sexuality all the time, and I get questions about the validity of my performance because, well, if you're just a girl dressing like a girl, is it really drag? I also get questions about, I've done performances that were not strictly burlesque and they were not strictly drag. They were kind of a blending of the two, and I've used my bodies as part of my body as part of the performance. So I've been challenged on that because people will say, well, being a feminist, are you not objectifying yourself on stage and selling your body? So my argument that basically encompasses all of these is that performing and doing drag, whether I'm showing my body or not, gives me complete self-empowerment because it gives me the control of when, how, and why I show my body. At the same time, it gives me control of when, how, and why I show my gender, I show my sexuality, and I show my identity. So that's kind of why I got into drag. This really ties into a lot of what Ryan was saying. I identify, for all heteronormative society's purposes, if I were to tick all of the boxes, I am a cisgendered straight female. However, being a cisgendered straight female, I don't feel that heteronormative society represents my femininity accurately. And now that's not to claim that I am not female or that I feel androgynous or that I feel unfemale in some way, but I don't fit into the categories of femininity that society says are stereotypical or expected. My face doesn't fit, my body doesn't fit, the roles that I've chosen in the workplace and the home don't fit, and in general, I don't fit. At the same time, I don't necessarily fit into the boxes of the queer and GLBTQ communities either. So drag kind of lets me play with my gender, sexuality, and identity in a way that lets me construct my own femininity and put my personality into it. I really am able to inject the fun and the glitter. Yeah, so it kind of lets me hyper-feminize in a way that I think is great. And if I, honestly, as a younger person, had these more mainstreamed drag queens now, because drag is mainstreaming in a way, if I had them to look up to as role models, as opposed to like the heteronormative photoshopped pop stars that I had to look up to, I probably would have been a very different person, much like I am now, a lot earlier in my life. But I didn't, and drag kind of led me in that way to construct my own conceptions of femininity.
I like that. We're actually getting some questions here. Chris is relaying them for me. And what Courtney brought up there, which was kind of a big deal in a lot of ways, but also something that maybe we're not comfortable talking about, and it's a good question for Ryan. But Ryan, how do you correct someone who's misgendered you or use the wrong pronoun? What's, not that there should be any particular way to do it, but can you offer some advice to people who are experiencing that, and maybe like have had Courtney's experience, where they need to tell somebody, they need to talk to them, but they don't want to make it a confrontation, or they want to have some way of doing it in a more pleasant or just more interactive way?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like Courtney, some of her experiences as well as mine, you shouldn't assume anyone's gender or sexuality based on anything that they do. So, I think the best way would be to actually have a conversation with someone. It's really not that difficult. I think it seems that, this word heteronormative, right? The norm of society is that we assume that people are heterosexual with this association of gender norms and gender roles, and the fact of the matter is that just doesn't describe everyone that exists. There is such a diversity in the world, and so to make those assumptions can be it's not accurate, and it can actually be very cruel to people. And so if people misgender someone, or if people assume a certain sexuality about another person, I think that it is pretty much everyone's responsibility to say, hey, wait a minute, you shouldn't make those assumptions. And really the best way...
you're actually suggesting that it's not just the person, it's all of us together.
Of course, yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. Because that needs to change in society. Culture, we have a responsibility by just being members of a culture to not assume heterosexuality and not assume certain gender roles or sexuality preferences of anyone.
So it's a good rule of thumb, I think, that you're trying to put up is just basically don't walk into a situation assuming. And actually, the question itself, I'm going to turn it on its head. I think that the correct question might be, how do you respond when you have misgendered someone? And I think the first one is always just be like, okay. Like, that should be the first thing that comes out of is, okay. Right. And then change. I don't think that anyone wants you to, I mean, someone might want you to prostrate yourself. That's another show on another channel. But, I think it's a good idea just to remember that it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to deal with that and admit and move on. Courtney, we have a comment from D. Stackhouse. Saying that your eye makeup is on fleek tonight, and that's with an exclamation point.
Thank you,
Yes.
darling.
There we go. And then I actually have two questions for our photographer. So Alina, one question is from Devin Hunter off of Twitter. He says, in editing the pictures you take in the moment, do you add, quote, story and meaning, or only accentuate them?
No, I leave what's there in the moment in the photos. My accentuation of the photos is accentuating color, accentuating mood, things like that. But I don't go in and like add story in terms of like adding props or adding background or anything like that.
So you work to heighten the image that you captured in an artistic, artly way, but you're not actually trying to take it out of its context and make something that it isn't, more of like a collage approach.
No, I don't do that.
And then we have another question for you. Is it different photographing burlesque performers when they're male?
Absolutely not. They're just, for me, they're nicer to look at sometimes.
I agree.
I've photographed, like Toronto has a really rich burlesque scene, which is fabulous. And I've been to Las Vegas and to New York, and there's fabulous burlesque scenes there as well. Sometimes, just because of their physicality, they can do things that female burlesque performers can't. In Toronto, they tended to do pole work much sooner than the female burlesque performers got into it. But they do the same rich storylines, they do the same costuming, the rich costuming. They're just as talented as the female burlesque performers. It's the same kind of scene. It's fabulous to photograph as well.
Oh, that's amazing. We've actually got another question for Courtney. Courtney, and this one's from Devin Hunter again, is, other than Lady Gaga, do you consider Cyndi Lauper an early example of something akin to a bio queen? Do you think that she was touching into that? And how does androgyny in general sort of fit into the bio queen movement?
Absolutely. I actually read Cyndi Lauper's autobiography not that long ago, and I just lived for so many of her stories and experiences. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It was that same feeling that I expressed earlier about identifying as a cisgendered woman but not feeling represented by what society sees as a cisgendered woman. So I see her as a forerunner in terms of the public sphere and the accessible icon sphere of women who are trying to redefine their femininity without having to shirk it and without having to say, okay, I don't want to be this idea of feminine, so I have to throw off femininity and I have to become masculine, or I have to become even androgynous to an extent, although I do find that bio-drag and androgyny can intersect sometimes. For me, the element of androgyny that kind of comes into my drag every once in a while, it just fits with my body. As I said, sometimes people have trouble seeing whether I'm male, female, somewhere in between. But I see it intersect a lot with bio-drag simply because a lot of people consider an androgynous look to be very pretty, and I think even people who have these wider conceptions of gender and who can be pretty and who can be handsome and who can be whatever, they still think pretty is on the feminine side. So when they see something appealing that's androgynous, they kind of still think feminine. But yeah, I see the two communities and the two identities and the two representations and performances intersecting all the time. And I would definitely say Cyndi Lauper for sure was one of like the original bio queens, even if she didn't know it.
You actually brought up something really interesting, and it comes up a lot when we talk about LGBTQ advocacy, but you've used it very pointedly tonight, where it almost sounds like femininity, to your mind, is like a weapon, is like a knife. Is that would be an accurate metaphor sometimes for the way you feel it's been used against you? Yeah,
I think it could be. I think it can be a weapon against me in terms of what society expects of me, because I don't live up to the stereotypical femininity. As I said, I don't do it in the path I've chosen in the workplace. I don't do it at home. I'm 26 now, and people are kind of looking at me like, when are you going to settle down and get married and have kids? And I'm like, well, I'm still busy putting on wigs, so give me a moment. But I, at the same time, think that it can also be my weapon to fight back against that. I can do femininity hyper-feminized. I can do femininity where I take a lot of the femininity out of it. And I think it can just be... it can just be a wider conception than what people think femininity can be.
I like that a lot. I'm really glad that you brought that up as a point, because I think that it's very easy for gay men, to talk about toxic masculinity, and it's very easy for us to talk about fuckboys and some of the things that are going on culturally speaking, and even in porn and eroticism, which is an area that I work in, the sort of hyper-masculine, hyper-heteronormative things that are going on. And it's easy to identify them as men, but I think it's gone on so much longer and so much under the current when it comes to women. And I want to turn over to Ryan for a second, because this kind of leads into another discussion, is that femininity is often used as a weapon against performers, like burlesque performers, and it's almost used as a weapon sometimes by certain areas of feminism, or has been historically. Tell me just a little bit about how can a woman feel okay doing burlesque, okay doing eroticism, okay doing adult entertainment, and still feel contained and whole, and what kind of societal things are changing to allow that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the main concern that feminists, at least historically, the argument has been, is around the idea of consent. So can a woman consent to existing in a patriarchal culture, to use her body to make money? So whatever that might be, whether it's in sex labor, or if it's in burlesque, and I'm certainly not saying the two are the same, if it's in any type of using nudity, like the great picture that Christopher just showed, because the idea is that how in the world could a woman use her body in a way that wasn't for male desire, and use it for an empowering tool. And it's one of those things where by claiming one's own body, and especially a body that maybe doesn't fit into a cultural standard category, such as Courtney was saying, pushing the boundaries of hyperfemininity. Or we were talking about earlier, photographing bodies of all different shapes and sizes in burlesque. What does that look like for empowering the self? And quite honestly, it looks like an amazing thing. And there is a divide. I mean, there was a huge conference at Barnard in the 80s. I was 12. I wish I was there, honestly. But and it had to do with feminists of desire, and then feminists who absolutely thought that there was no possible way women could consent to using their bodies in such a patriarchal society. And the fact of the matter is that maybe it is the case that some women exist in certain circumstances where they can't consent. But in modern cities, and I live right outside of Los Angeles, or in larger cities, in a modern industrial society, that doesn't seem to be the case for most people, right? We do have control over our bodies. We can consent. I'm not talking about situations where someone doesn't have that ability, of course. But through using the body, we can find a sense of identity and empowerment, and I think that is exactly, kind of what you're asking me this question about.
Yeah, that was kind of the nail on the head. There is that you can use yourself and use your body to empower. And I mean, speaking from yourself. Oh, I like that. Claim yourself is a good point. Speaking as a photographer, and I'm going to go over to Alina in a second. The idea of consent and the idea of empowerment is something that's very hard sometimes for me to play with. I work with some porn stars, I work with non-porn stars, and so the idea of being able to create art with them without feeling exploitative, or suggest that they do a nude without being sounding like the dirty old man that I shortly will be. But tell me a little bit about how you go about getting and working with and getting the consent of burlesque performers and establishing a rapport so that you can do something where they're completely exposed, but they're doing so in an artistic way, and I wonder, is it like collaboration? Because that's how I feel for me. It's like a collaboration between the two of us.
Yeah, it's definitely a collaboration. The best way to do that is I don't come in as kind of I'm on vacation gawker photographer. I spent a long time going to shows, getting to know the burlesque photographers, talking to them, talking about what they do, how they do it, letting them know just how much I admire what they do. becoming friends with them, and the most important part was asking permission to come in and photograph, and then giving them photographs for their own use so that they could see what I did, and they could let me know whether they, like, how they felt about the photography, what did they think of it, and we kind of established the rapport that way. So it got a lot more comfortable, and there's a friendship there. And that also led to them being able to come into the studio as well, to do something a little bit more creative, other than doing the straight-on performance photography.
Interesting. Well, I mean, obviously, consent is also important after the fact. So not only is it important during and getting the photos, but and looking at the idea of empowerment. Chris, I know that you had some reservations as you began this book. Talk to me a little bit about how this book was different than drag, and how you as a man, approached working in a subject matter that is almost predominantly female for the most part.
Well, to be honest, the main thing, we went to burlesque after drag because drag is too many clothes for one gender, and burlesque is when you leave it all on the floor. It kind of made a natural bridge for me. The first book
I feel like
was
that sales pitch has been worked out before.
a little bit, maybe. The first book was all men. It was dressed as girls, so men dressed as women. And so then I wanted to be very female heavy to balance out my catalog of 2 books. What we did with the burlesque book is we engaged people like Elena and Stephanie Sojan and Tony Willacci, who gave us a lot of wonderful photos. So we have a lot of female photographers in this book. So I'm not a gay man telling women how their bodies should look or choosing the photos. It's not like Sex and the City written by gay men and they're suddenly all sluts. So we have, I think we have a very wide range of diverse types and body types and people, races and everything in the book. But it is a lot of women photographers who captured these women. But we do have a few guys in there as well because, hey, if you can't fuck with gender right now, what can you fuck with?
So you actually answered the question I was about to ask you, which was, are there men burlesque performers in the book? You and I actually had a really fun talk just this last Friday on the GSC Friday program with Chris Harder.
Chris Harder, yeah.
Yeah, who's a boylesque performer. Mm-hmm. And I know that Courtney, you actually mentioned that boylesque and bio queens sometimes intersect. I was kind of curious. Tell us just a little bit about that for people that aren't familiar with the male side of the equation. What is boylesque? What do male burlesque performers, from your perspective, feel like and look like?
From mine?
Yeah, your experiences.
Well, I find that bio drag actually intersects with a lot of other forms of drag, burlesque, and performance, simply because we're such a small category that sometimes people forget we're a category, so we get blended in with everybody, which I actually am not opposed to. I know some bio kings who are biological males performing as drag kings, and they are forgotten about completely. Boylesque is a little more predominant, but at the same time, again, the minority. I find that boylesque, at least the boylesque artists that I know, it's again a way to sort of claim their masculinity and put it on display, but do so in an alternative way than what just performing as a man lets them do. At the same time, they're not going as far as drag and masking their masculinity and temporarily adopting a performative feminine identity. Boylesque, I find, or at least in my experience, is kind of that happy medium. It lets them play with their masculinity, and they can, they can femme it up a little bit, but they can still put their very male body on display. Or I know boylesque performers that completely blend their boylesque with drag as well, and they start in full, what they call high whore drag, and they start glammed out woman, and then all of a sudden they're stripped down to their tights and their hip pads, and then the hip pads go flying, and you're confronted with a male who's still got a female face painted on. And it's very gender bendy, very gender fucky, and to be honest, it's my favorite thing in the whole entire world.
I actually have someone I'm going to introduce you to, a very good friend of mine. I can't say the name yet because things are still being worked out. The performance is still being developed, but
perfect.
I have a feeling that coming as we move forward, especially with drag and as we see it in the mainstream with Drag Race, and there'll be more. It's becoming a thing. We're going to see more of these bending movements, more of these intersections, and I think that's why I love Chris's books and work so much, because he has been ahead of that curve. 2 years ago, he started working on bringing drag into the mainstream. Oh wait, do that again, Chris, so they can see.
That's me ahead of the curve. We're sliding down the other side of the curve. Okay.
But it's a really amazing thing to see these kind of things happening and the diversities and those kind of things. But if you guys have any last questions before we get done, tweet those to @DeanSageMedia and under #Tease Talk, and I will ask them before we leave. But we're going to start wrapping it down since we've held your attention for about an hour, which is as long as a human being seems to be able to pay attention to me. I've timed it. So I want to come back to Elena actually, and I have to apologize. Have I been saying your name wrong the entire broadcast and you said nothing?
Yeah, it's okay.
Speaking of being wrong and it being okay, well, I was wrong. So, this is actually a great opportunity. How can people find your work, and how can they stay in contact with you? What's your Twitter? What's your website? Give us ways that we can find you and connect with you, and maybe even purchase some of your work.
Well, one of the best ways, I photograph and I blog for Burlesque Beat magazine, which is an online magazine completely devoted to burlesque. So it's at burlesquebeat.com, and you can also find my work on my website at photolena.ca, which is PHOTOLENA.ca, and that's how you can contact me as well through that website. If you ever want to work in the studio with me, or if you want me to come see your show, contact me. I would love to come out. I do everything from fetish to drag to burlesque to anything that is body empowering and celebrates sexuality.
I absolutely adore that. It's one of the things that I don't get to do as much of because it's actually funny. I work in porn from time to time, and people would think that would mean I have access to all the weirdest, craziest stuff out there. But actually, it's some of the most vanilla work that I do. I think some of my editorial series are way more, bending and fetish and things than any of the shoots I've ever done on a porn set. So, but that's really great. So make sure you check out Elena's work, and obviously you can also get Elena's work in the new book Burlesque, which of course we're going to do another promo. If you use promo code Tease, going over to Chris. If you do the promo code Tease right now, TEASE.
TESE, use it in the discount code box at the checkout at bookthefilm.com, and you'll get 30% off the book. If you're interested in the drag book as well, that code will work right now as well. So you can buy one, buy both.
And if you haven't seen the drag book, Chris is going to show us a little preview of that in a second when we come back to him, because they are amazing as well. But I'm going to head over to Ryan. You obviously are a wealth of information.
Thank you.
Can we say that we would consider setting up a panel talk at some time, or at least a one-on-one talk?
I would love that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Now, how do we find some of your work? I know you have the whole range. So you work with the Sisters of Professional Indulgence. You're also an academic with published journal entries. So give us
journal entries, books. I mean, yeah.
Tell us how we can go from the academic all the way to the fun and find your stuff.
So I am developing a web page right now, and it's almost finished. It is live and run up right now. You can find it. It's dragprofessor.com. And then my Instagram and Twitter, also Drag Professor. So that's pretty much where most of my things are. I don't have my publications online yet, but I do have a new student assistant, so all of that should be up very shortly. I know, so great.
Wait, student assistant, is that code word for slave? Is that a fetish thing?
We don't call that. We don't call her that.
Line?
Student assistant. They're paid now. It's amazing.
Oh.
They weren't when I was one.
Yeah, me neither.
It used to be just called work study, I think. So somehow that figured into your college loans. But now student assistants are paid $15 an hour. She's doing well. So yeah, Drag Professor, and then of course, if you follow the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence in Los Angeles, we're always doing really fun things.
And are there any exhibits, exhibitions, performances, anything that the Sisters are doing new?
So I want to just kind of plug two things. First of all, tomorrow night, the Sisters in LA at the Village at Ed Gould Plaza from 7 to 9. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary
Did you write that on your hand?
In Los Angeles. So that's kind of a really amazing thing to be in LA here for 20 years now, the Sisters. And then on March 12th at Resident LA, which is an art house, the Ryan Rory Foundation will be celebrating. It's actually my novice project to elevate to a black veil, which is the highest level of the Sisters. We'll be having an event to celebrate one of my friends who passed away. He was actually a drag queen here in LA named Killer. And so that event is March 12th at Resident LA. So.
And if you tweet those out, we'll make sure that we retweet them so anyone who follows the main stuff, you guys can join in. Now, the dragprofessor.com, I think that sounds like a podcast or something, so I think we should do some talking, because that's a really great domain. I'm very, very mad at you for being able to grab that domain. That's excellent. We'll talk to Chris, get it all branded. Chris, let's do a little bit about that drag book, though, because this is also available with the 30% off. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And the drag book has everybody in it from Larry Edwards and Frank Marino and the queens who have conquered the Vegas scene, Kenneth Blake, to Lady Bunny and Jackie Beat, and then people from RuPaul's Drag Race like Raja, if you can see that. And we also have the most amazing Miss Coco Peru, one of my favorite performers, who, if you don't know, Coco does like a live monologue and stage show. She's a monologuist and world savior. And right now, actually, Coco's actually doing a Kickstarter also to do a pilot. She's interviewing Lily Tomlin for her pilot.
Wow.
So if you go to Kickstarter and look at Coco Peru, you can help be part of the history of the first drag talk show host, Coco Peru. And she's been touring for years. She's phenomenal. And then, just so you know the cover, it's Jeffree Star, who, if anyone fucks with gender and glam, it is Mr. Jeffree Star. He's phenomenal. And once again, why is Jeffree Star on the cover? Because if I put a drag queen on the cover, they would beat me senseless. All the other queens would beat me up. Yes, but you can go to bookthefilm.com and use Tease as the promo code and get discounts on both books. And my favorite thing in the world is, I wish I had the photo to show you here, but there was a young boy who was dancing in the New York Pride Parade, very young, dressed up, and he's a friend of ours who came to our book launch. And there's a photo of him doing his makeup for that event with the drag book open to Courtney Act's page, and he's painting like her and giving me a thumbs up, and it's just the most beautiful little thing.
We started a Facebook page for him. Did you know that?
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, he and his mother and I did. can we say that on?
I believe so, Wendy and Desi, right?
Yeah, so the Facebook page is called Desmond is Amazing, and yeah, you should definitely check it out because he is amazing.
Yeah, he's one of those people that it's almost like the next step. For me, it's like when we watch Project Runway, suddenly there's 13 and 14-year-old gay boys snapping and talented and owning their space alongside the California girl who's a surfer and the girl who is the tough New York street style chick, and they're all like in their mid-teens but owning the world already with no compunction about who they are or who the other person is. They just are mutually respectful of the fact that everyone's an individual, and Desmond's growing up in that world, and it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think we've lost Dean for sound this time.
Yeah, I think
I can hear his mouth moving. I can see Dean's mouth moving. Why don't Courtney? Since you can see Dean's mouth moving, Dean? Why don't you move your mouth, and Courtney, you can voice him over.
I don't lip read well, but we can give it a try if you want.
Well, maybe not. Worth a shot, though.
Okay, I mean, I haven't talked about any of my contact stuff yet. I can fill time.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
At filling time. So, again, my name is Courtney Conkers. I have a Facebook Live page that's Courtney Conkers. I have Instagram, Twitter, Periscope. It's all Courtney Conker. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let me have that S. I don't know why. Alternatively, if you're intrigued by the Drag Coven idea, then we have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Periscope. Our Instagram is really, really, really active. We do photography and videography for a lot of the queens that we go see. That's RuPaul's Drag Race queens and local queens. We're hopefully going to be creating original YouTube content sometime very soon. Right now, it's mostly the queens that we go to see perform. We like to give them a platform for their pictures, and also it helps us learn photography, so that's fun. So all of that is Drag Coven. And that's where you can contact all three of us collectively through there, or you can get it at myself at Courtney Conkers. My email is courtneyconkers@gmail.com. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Do we have Dean back?
No, I don't believe so. We've kind of lost Dean for the sound. So I'll just wrap everything up. I want to thank everyone for coming out, especially Dean Sage for hosting us at deansagemedia.com. Courtney, it's lovely to have you. You're vibrant and lovely. I love everything about you, and I would sit beside you in life and never behind you at the movies, because I would never see anything with that bow. Lana, it's so fantastic to finally meet you in person. Your photography has made my book richer. Your photography has made burlesque people's lives richer. And it's just wonderful what you capture and what you're able to bring to the world. And my favorite drag professor, is Ryan Caldwell, who came all the way out to 2 of my book launches in New York and in Los Angeles. Has been such a great supporter, and we're gonna do something together one day. We're gonna we're gonna beat down that door and meet through the window. I absolutely adore you and your perspective on life and what you've accomplished. I think you're absolutely amazing. So thank you, everyone. And for everyone, DeanSageMedia.com is a great place to hang out. You can see him often on Gay Sex Chat also from Philadelphia and New York. And come back because he will be hosting online book launches for lots of people, including possibly any one of our panelists in the next year. So I'll sign off for us all now because we can't hear Dean. And goodbye, everybody. And please remember, you can use the code Tease
at
bookthefilm.com. Nice meeting you all. And I hope everyone had a blast. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Bye.